Time of the ascension of Emperor Zhao, China had become one of the most powerful states in the world, whose recent territorial expansions could largely be attributed to his father and predecessor Wu, whose reign was included in historian Sima Qian's records of the Grand Historian, which covered the Qin dynasty up to this point. The rapid expansion did, however, have the negative effect of draining the imperial coffers, so Zhao halted further expansion and focused on lowering taxes while decreasing government spending and oversaw a time of economic prosperity for the Chinese. Much of these winning policies can be attributed to Zhao's regent, Huo Gang, who was necessary since Zhao ascended to the throne at the mere age of 7. At a young age, he married Empress Xiao Zhao, but he unfortunately passed away unexpectedly at the age of 20 before they had any children. Huo Gang then needed to pick a successor. Emperor Wu in total had 6 sons, which in order were Liu Zhu, who had committed suicide with his mother after being passed up for Zhao, Liu Dan, and Liu Shu, who were both passed up for the role of emperor due to their fathers and Huo Gang's beliefs that they were irresponsible. Liu Bo, who was a good son, but who had unfortunately preceded his father in death, and Zhao. Therefore, instead of choosing one of Zhao's surviving brothers as emperor, Huogang instead picked Liu He, who was the son of Liu Bo and who had currently been serving as Prince of Shangyang. Ecstatic about being picked as emperor, Liu He began an elaborate march to the capital, bringing large crowds of concubines and musicians to help him celebrate, culminating in his official ascension in 74 BC. The late Emperor Zhao had been popular, and it was expected, along with customary tradition, that during the official period of mourning after the death of an emperor, that his subjects, especially his successor, would honor him by not indulging in alcohol, sex, or partying until the funeral was complete. Liu He's total disregard for the mourning period continued as he threw parties in the capital every night. Disgusted with his pick, Gang expelled Liu He after only 27 days and forced him to return to Shangyang, where his title as prince was revoked. Before committing suicide, Liu Ju had a son named Liu Jin, who had a son named Shuan, who was Huo Gang's next pick as emperor. Because of the conflict surrounding Liu Ju's suicide, his descendants had grown up and lived life among the commoners. This meant that Emperor Shuan had an understanding of the needs of the common people that other emperors did not possess, and he became a very popular leader with the people as he continued Zhao's efforts to lower taxes and spur prosperity. Kuo Gang's wife wanted to take this opportunity to insert her family into the royal lineage, and she approached Emperor Shuan's pregnant first wife, Shu Pingjun, with maternal advice on how to recover after giving birth. She provided the empress with a rejuvenation medicine, which was a poison, and she died. Emperor Shuan would later marry Huo Gang's daughter, meaning the plan was a success. After Huogang passed away in 68 BC, rumors began to surface that the dead empress had been poisoned by Huogang's wife and other conniving relatives, allowing the family to wield greater power in the imperial administration. Enraged, Emperor Shuan ordered the execution of all the members of Huogang's family for retaliation against the plot that killed his first wife. Shuan died in 48 BC and was followed by his son Yuan. Yuan disagreed with his father in several aspects, most prominently his tendency to rely on legalism, as he increasingly passed more and more laws following the incident with the Huo family. Yuan instead favored Confucian ideology, which he believed would do a better job controlling and leading the population than any strict legal code would. Regardless of whether he was right or not, this sudden change in preference at the emperor level and the introduction of a team of Confucian scholars who became imperial advisors, created a conflict with the existing Han legal system, and the two sides emerged vying to influence the policies of the empire. The Confucian faction, who wanted things to return to how they were during the Zhou dynasty, and the court faction, who wanted to maintain the existing Han system. This factionalism would weaken the Han administration and cause it to shrink marginally as they pulled back from territories such as the island of Hainan because it was deemed too expensive and difficult to maintain order. Yuan died in 33 BC and was followed by his son Chang. Emperor Chang had a high sex drive and was content at letting his administration disintegrate into factional bickering while he got around with both female and male partners. At one point, he became enamored with two exotic dancers who were also sisters named Zhao Feiyan and Zhao Hidi. He favored Zhao Feiyan and made her empress, but retained Zhao Hidi as a concubine. The sisters, who were previously just commoners, were overwhelmed by their newfound power and they hoped to hold on to it. On two separate occasions, when they discovered that one of the emperor's other concubines had become pregnant, they had the baby forcibly aborted so that their future child could be their sole heir. However, neither of the Zhao sisters would ever bear one of Chang's children, either due to the fact that they were infertile or that Chang was more into his male lover, Zhang Fang. During one of the Zhao sisters' attempts to get the emperor to impregnate them, they gave him a large dose of aphrodisiacs, which he overdosed on and died in 7 BC. And with no son of his own, he was followed by his nephew Ai, who had been the son of Chang's younger brother Liu Kang. Like his uncle, Ai was into men, even more so to the point that he was not interested in having children and became romantically exclusive with a low-level official named Dong Xian. The general Chinese public had been optimistic that Emperor Ai would be able to reverse the decline of the Han dynasty that began under Emperor Yuan, but this was something he failed to do, and many disapproved of his homosexuality. When Ai died childless in 1 BC, he was followed by his cousin Ping, who was the son of Chang's youngest brother Liu Xing, and Dong Xian was forced to commit suicide. Emperor Ping was only 8 years old when he ascended to the throne, so a powerful regent named Wang Mang was installed. Wang Mang believed the Han kings were consecutively destroying China, and he aimed to seize power as a dictator to stop this trend. His own son became disillusioned with his father's totalitarian tilt as regent, and he secretly approached Emperor Ping's uncles to discuss them replacing Wang Mang as regent. When Wang Mang found out about this, he had his son and all the emperor's uncles executed. Being young and also suffering from a genetic heart condition, Ping was helpless in stopping these orders being carried out by his regent. By the time he was 14, Ping began to plan to take power for himself and end the regency of Wang Mang. So, in efforts to stop this, Wang Mang poisoned and killed Ping in the year 6 AD and was replaced by his youngest male relative, Ru Ziying, so that Wang Mang could exercise complete control. After 3 years of this arrangement, Wang Mang became even more bold and decided to claim the throne for himself. He deposed the child emperor Ru Ziying and forced him into strict house arrest for the next 14 years, which coincided with many pivotal years of his childhood development that became evident upon his release when he did not recognize or have a word for any of the common animals found about. Because Wang Mang was not part of the Han family, he declared the end of the Han dynasty and the beginning of the Qin dynasty in year 9. The Qin dynasty was not so much a dynasty as Wang Mang would end up being its only emperor and would be followed by a reinstated Han administration. However, its interpretation of the Han dynasty, or interruption, excuse me, of the Han dynasty lends it to be separated into two periods, with the first half already discussed being referred to as the Western Han dynasty, which had its capital in Chang'an. Wang Mang and his new Qin dynasty did not have strong support from the existing noble class, but his usurp of power was tolerated due to how ineffective the last few Han kings had been. The Xiongnu people saw this as an opportunity to take back control of the protectorate of the western regions, despite the emperor sending an army of 300,000 soldiers to repel them, which did not help to replenish the empire's finances. To make matters worse, shortly after this, an intense rainy season occurred, causing widespread flooding to the point the Yellow River changed courses. Prior to the floods, the empire had suffered from a prolonged drought, so this rapid change created the perfect environment for locusts. Locusts are simply grasshoppers who are participating in a large group of other grasshoppers to coordinate their actions. The rapid change from dry to wet weather creates a sudden change in the serotonin levels of grasshoppers, causing them to enter an altered state in an act known as becoming gregarious. When gregarious, the grasshoppers, who are usually quite individualistic, swarm together as a hive mind to eat and mate, spreading their population as fast as they can. These factors destroyed the food supply and widespread famine ensued. The peasants, who had initially been some of Wang Mang's strongest supporters, began a revolt and formed rebel groups, with the two main groups being the Red Eyebrows, which was a militant group of peasant farmers from the east, and the Lulin, which was made of Han royalists. The Lulin forces were closer to the capital of Chang'an, and by the year 23, they had pushed back the Qin dynasty's dwindling forces inside the walls and laid siege to the city, obliterating it and killing the emperor, ending the Qin dynasty. The popular Lulin general Liu Yan was a favorite amongst the rebel army to succeed Wang Mang as the first restored Han emperor, although many nobles did not favor him since he was strong and capable, and they preferred someone who was weaker and easier to manipulate, so they instead chose Gangxi, who had been the prince of Huiyang. Gangxi was incredibly paranoid of being replaced by the more popular Liu Yan, and when one of his generals, Liu Ju, expressed his support for Liu Yan, he had him executed. Liu Yan tried to intervene to save Liu Ju's life, so Gang Shi decided to execute him too, although he believed he was showing mercy by sparing the life of Liu Yan's brother Liu Xiu, who Gang Shi appointed as general to retake areas lost around the Yellow River. Gang Shi had quickly proven himself incompetent, and the rebel forces of the Red Eyebrows, who derived their name from the intimidating red face paint that they wore, and they were still intact, they decided to overthrow Gang Shi, capturing and killing him in the year 25, placing their own puppet king, Liu Penzi, on the throne, who had grown up as a child soldier in the Red Eyebrow Army. The Red Eyebrows were even worse than the Lulin had been at running the government. So in year 27, General Liu Xiu returned from the Yellow River Valley with an army to ascend to the throne and restore the Han dynasty. Instead of executing the Red Eyebrow leaders who had temporarily governed, Liu Xiu decided to spare their lives, including Liu Penzi, as he wanted to set a precedent of tolerance. The Han capital was moved east from the ruined Chang'an back to the old Zhou capital of Luoyang, giving the second half of the dynasty the name the Eastern Han Dynasty. Liu Shu then slowly reunified the empire's lost territories, with the last area to be reconquered being the Sichuan Basin, which had the natural fortification of the Daba Mountains. There, Gongsun Shu, who had been the state's governor during the Qin dynasty, continued to rule, proclaiming himself emperor of the new independent state of Changjia. Unlike the other rebels, Gong's son Shu was strong and successful and would not cave to Liu Xiu's diplomatic pleas for reunification, so he had no choice but to send the imperial army in. Chengjia's capital of Chengdu was sieged, and Chengjia was eventually defeated when Gong's son Shu was tricked into coming out of hiding and was killed, causing the territory to lose its will for independence. And by 36, all the previous Chinese territory lost had been restored. Liu Shu is a capable leader who preferred a hands-off approach, which worked well during his administration, but may have caused issues for future leaders. The greatest example of this was that Liu Shu is naturally a gifted military strategist, so he decided to dismiss all the imperial strategists in an effort to save money, and he took on the role of being commander-in-chief, something he excelled at, but later emperors would try to emulate and crash and burn. He attempted to bring mercy and honor to those who had become eunuchs after receiving punishment by setting up new rules that required imperial advisors to be eunuchs, which was a decision that would have surprising consequences down the road as the eunuch class began to wield ever-increasing power. Liu Shu died in 57 and was followed by his son Ming. Ming was a competent emperor who rooted out corruption and eradicated the remnants of the Xiongnu raiders in the Tarim Basin, allowing the Silk Road to once again flourish, which at this point was when Buddhism began to flood into China. Ming died in 75 and was followed by his son Zhang. Zhang lowered taxes and saw a time of prosperity for the average Chinese person during his reign, which became considered a high point of the Eastern Han Dynasty, and the cultures and values espoused by his administration would live on broadly as Han culture, which many see as the bedrock for modern mainstream Chinese culture. Silk Road commerce influenced Zhang to push even further west to contain gangs of raiders, although initial Chinese settlements on the frontier were limited to military forts. After Ming had introduced protections for eunuchs and their role in the imperial administration, many members of the consort kin saw their power diminish, which angered them. Zhang recognized this and attempted to balance power between the eunuchs and consort kin by clawing back some powers. The consort kin is a nepotist group of royal family members who act as advisors to the emperor because of their relation to him, and is led by an empress dowager, who can either be the mother of the emperor or the widow of a deceased emperor. While the relationship between the male emperor and female empress was a traditional one, the powers bestowed upon an empress dowager shows that this did not mean the thoughts and ideas of women were disregarded, and oftentimes these women exerted immense power. Zhang died at 88 and was followed by his elder son He. Since he was only 9 at the time, his mother held lots of power as Empress Dowager, who led a corrupt consort kin. As he got older, he turned to the eunuchs to help rein in his mother, elevating them to higher positions. It is during his reign that his eunuch Kai Lun invented paper in the imperial workshop to replace the existing heavy and difficult to write on bamboo books. The paper was also made from bamboo, but which was smashed up and mixed with water to form a pulp, which was further hammered flat and dried. He had many sons, but unfortunately, most of them preceded him in death. So when he died in 106, he was followed by his infant son Shang, who was the best option. The baby emperor would die from illness later that year and would be followed by his cousin An, who was son of He's younger brother Liu Qing. Corruption continued under An, accompanied with drought and a general unraveling of the empire. In 125, while traveling through the empire, Emperor An fell ill and died. Empress Yanji did not want An's only son Shun to succeed him, since he was not her own son and belonged to another concubine, so she instead chose the Marquis of Beixiang to be emperor, even though he was a young child, which would make it easier for her to have actual power. The Marquis of Beixiang was the son of Liu Shu, the youngest son of Emperor Zhang. The eunuchs did not want to submit to the control of Empress Dowager Yanji, so they decided to support Shun in a coup, overthrowing the administration of Yanji, executing her, and deposing the Marquis of Beixiang, who died later that year from illness. Shun was unable to reverse the Eastern Han dynasty's decline, and he was followed by his infant and only son Chong in 144. Chong would die the following year from illness, so the Empress Dowager would choose 7-year-old Zi to be the next emperor, who was his son, or who was his cousin, excuse me. The Empress Dowager's brother Liang Ji acted as an autocratic regent, something which annoyed the emperor despite his young age. And only after 1 year of ruling, he was poisoned by Liang Ji, who feared he would turn to the eunuchs to overthrow the regency. Liang Ji replaced him with Huan, who had married into the Liang family through Liang Ji's sister. Emperor Huan disliked Liang Ji and his corrupt administration, and Liang Ji's worst fear came true when his chosen emperor went to the eunuchs and organized a coup, driving him and his family out of the government. Huan hoped this would stop corruption, but the emboldened eunuchs ended up being the most corrupt administrators of all. During his reign, a Roman envoy arrived in Luoyang, the first of its kind, and Emperor Huan proudly greeted the diplomats. He died in 168 without a son, so he was followed by his cousin Ling. The eunuchs under Ling were at the pinnacle of their power and formed an administration called the Ten Eunuchs, led by Zhang Rang. Students at the Confucian University in Luoyang began to resist the corrupt governing of the eunuchs, and under the leadership of their Confucian professors, they became known as partisans who began to organize protests against Emperor Ling. Zhang Rang had the partisans arrested and planned to execute them for treason, but ended up pardoning them to deal with the much bigger Yellow Turban Rebellion, which was made up of farmers who had become radicalized Taoist extremists. The proliferation of trade with the Europeans along the Silk Road brought plagues to China at this time, killing many people and bringing widespread panic. Taoist religious leader Zhang Ju claimed to have a magical water to cure the plague, and he amassed an army who distinguished themselves by wearing their characteristic yellow turbans. The Yellow Turban Rebellion was suppressed, but it greatly weakened the empire. Ling died in 189 and was followed by his son Lu Bian. At this point, the military began to plan a coup against the eunuchs and marched an army on Luoyang. The eunuchs, in response, took the royal family as hostages, but the well-trained soldiers were able to rescue the family and execute the eunuchs, ending their control. General Dong Zhou thought that Emperor Liu Bian was too close to the eunuchs, so he had him deposed and replaced with his younger brother Xian.